Yeah, thank you so much. And definitely, since I sent my abstract, things have changed. And hello everybody to measuring success with internationalization KPIs. I'm so glad that you guys stayed for my talk on a Friday afternoon. I missed you all. Then I have chosen to present virtually because of the pandemic, but at the same time, and my job, because I'm kind of on a DevOps organization, and if you guys know what DevOps is, it's like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I don't get a lot of free time. But anyway, thanks to the pandemic, we have now new opportunities to present. This is my first presentation in a hybrid format where basically the people are live in a room and I'm on the video. Then we'll see how that goes. And then I'm trying to optimize every hour of the day. Then I made a super quick presentation and also left a time for Q&A. Then with that, then let's get started. Then you already know me from many of the Unicode conference presentations. I have, believe it or not, I'm cutting it short, but I lost count. Probably more than 25 years working on internationalization. I'm currently at Oracle, and I'm a principal TPM leading the regional acceleration team with more than 50 developers. And it's super exciting. I'll tell you more about it. On my free time, I try to help women and minorities get into computer science and stay into computer science and engineering. Then today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the evolution of data and what has happened in the last, especially the last couple of years, about what KPIs are and about observability. Then let's start with evolution of data. And I want to start with an analogy. Then, as I mentioned, I have been leading global software development for many companies for the last 25 years, working primarily in many customer-facing products, right? And in creating the shared technologies for these customer-facing products, like Adobe and like Windows Live, including Bing, Hotmail, MSN, and all that. Tons of little startups. But when I was being hired at Oracle and I was interviewing, they were saying, "Okay, we want you in the Oracle cloud infrastructure," and I'm like, "Hey, wait a minute, I really haven't done any cloud infrastructure before. I have been kind of on the front end of things, working on the services, but not really working on the actual infrastructure." And the analogy is basically that I have been building cars all my life, and they wanted me to build roads. Then we all know about roads, right? We know that they are paved, and they have like signals and signs and, and lines. But it's very different to use a road than to build it. Well, as you can imagine, my learning curve has been exponential because now I'm basically building roads. That's my job. At the same time, it's super exciting because I feel that I'm building the future. And I'm going to spending, some time telling you a little bit, just a tad about it. Then, what does this mean? Then why I'm now that I'm building roads, then let me tell you just very, very quickly about the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Basically, it's an internet scale network of data centers around the world. Then this is very close to my heart, right? It's all around the world. Then it's hosted in regions and what they call availability domains. Then a region is a localized geographic area, and an availability domain is one or more data centers located within the region. Then a region is composed of one or more availability domains, and most of Oracle Cloud infrastructure resources are either region-specific, such as a virtual cloud network, or availability domain-specific, such as a compute instance. Then this is kind of in a nutshell. Then right now, this, what you see here in the map, these are our current regions. And we're going to be expanding to thousands and thousands of regions in the near future. Then super exciting. Uh, then, then let's see. With all this infrastructure has to be able to handle like millions, billions, trillions, quintillions of bytes in a single day. Then currently, there is, as of a report that I read like just last week, we are processing, and I mean we as humanity, we're processing 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. And 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years alone. And it's expected that this data is going to double every couple of years. Then, fun fact, anybody knows how many zeros follow a quintillion? I cannot hear you, but it's 18 zeros. Crazy, right? And then, how did we get here of so much data? Then 2020 was like the best of times and was like the worst of times, just like a Dickens novel, right? Then we all know about the worst of times, then let's not go there. But then let's talk about the best of times, right? Then the technology used, as we all know, is skyrocketed, right? With distance learning, right? Kids were suddenly studying, from home. All of us working from home. All of us, watching Netflix. All of us playing games, and so on, and shopping, of course, getting lots of shopping done. Then we kind of took for granted, this exponential growth. We just expected everything to work, right? But the backbone of this growth was basically all the cloud infrastructure. And I'm not taking, merit for Oracle, but basically everybody, right? Is like AWS, Google, Azure, Oracle. Then all these companies are basically have been kind of like growing at the speed of light to be able to support, all these services. Then, when I first started working in this team, I was like, okay, then all this needs to be applicable to internationalization, right? Then, and as people around the world were working from home, learning from home, shopping and gaming from home, then companies needed to expand, right, into all these new markets, new languages, new payment methods, new operational processes, right? Hello, DevOps, to meet the new demands very, very quickly. Then we all know that all the benefits for enabling since day one, right? And I'm speaking to the choir. Then, but some companies were caught off guard. Depending on where they were on the internationalization maturity model, they needed to make changes very, very rapidly to support this growth. Then you guys all remember my internationalization maturity model, right? And this is a graph that I actually show a lot. And this was basically developed out of years and years of experience, right? Then we start like phase one, phase zero, right? Just defining what the strategy is going to be, what markets we're going to go. We may develop like a tiny little MVP. And then, we basically define our market growth in tiers, right? Then we have like the phase one. Then we want to define what is going to be the market, establish the market scalability, right? In the product, the infrastructure, the business processes, and then, enable the epic stories. Then like the homepage, how is that going to look like? Are they going to be able to select language? Are they going to be able to select country and things like that, right? And then maybe, start with Western European. To tell you the truth now, it's like, it's the Wild West. But anyway, then you go to the next one where you basically start to do the localizability, and then final one, to have the world ready product. I don't want to bother you with that, but just wanted to do the quick review of how my mental model works, right? Then the big question is that now that we have all this data, are we ready to process it, right? We are scaling at the speed of light. Then are we ready to do this? Then how are we going to get there? Then with all this data, we have to be able to measure it. Otherwise, it's just like a blob that doesn't help us a lot. And, then in this new world, like of quintillions of data, then we need to measure two things, progress and success, right? Then the magic words are actually KPIs that are a performance indicator, a key performance indicator that helps us evaluate the success and what is the data that they want to consume at a very high level. And then you start to set up meetings to do brainstorming and to basically go and say, hey, it's like we're defining, all these KPIs and all these reports, and we need your help. Then hopefully everybody can hear me. And then why we need to start? Well, okay, let me try to go back. Then we basically want to focus on the big areas like the business value, what progress we have, and customer satisfaction. Then I'm going to talk about those three very quickly. Then on the business value, almost anybody here has had an experience where you basically had to put together a justification for internationalization, right? Then you start defining with the stakeholders is like, what is it important to you? Is it going to be the cost? Is it going to be the revenue? Is it going to be the traffic? Is it going to be the subscriptions, the brand, the partnerships? Then you basically have these conversations with the stakeholders and define what is important to them. And remember, kind of like our definition is to basically ensure that we define the what and also the value and the time frame when we're going to do this. Then if we go back to my progress, remember in this slide, we were talking about one thing that we wanted to measure was progress. And we want to decide where are we going to do our investments. At the very beginning, we invest on the internationalization and how we're going to measure that. And then the value of the localization, and then the value of the marketization. This is 11N. And the more we invest at the bottom, then the more we're going to be able to scale. And the third one that we wanted to track was the customer satisfaction metrics. And at the very beginning, actually, of working for Oracle, I was put into this to work on this project that was to basically understand the customer support improvements that were needed for a particular service that I was supporting. And I had to go into hundreds and hundreds of tickets to try to understand, what were the pain points from our customers. And basically, some of them, it's about the quality of the service. Others, if you start to think about in the context of international, will be localization issues. Others may be marketization. Others may be, questions about pricing and or just complaining about support that were not meeting the SLAs. Then in this project, working for the object store, there were like a lot of pain points that the customers had. And this included questions about the pricing. Then, Oracle customers basically get like a monthly bill, almost like what we all do. We get our PG&E bill, and it basically explains what they're being charged for. And there was like an item that was being shown that they were being charged for a particular service, and for anonymity, I won't go into that, but the big thing was that the reason they were being charged was because another service uses that service as the backend. Then we needed to clarify that. Then we had actually hundreds of questions about pricing. After we made changes into the reporting and how the billing was being shown for those services. Actually, the number of customer support tickets came down. Then basically, these were actionable KPIs that we were tracking. That we were tracking about a pricing KPIs. About the questions that people had, and as a result, we were able to fix that particular pain point. Then we kind of talked about these two examples about the customer metrics. We talked about the internationalization. Then how we determine this, and believe it or not, just start with something as simple as naming, the KPI, and you can go around the room and and decide how you're going to name something. And sometimes it's the simplest and most explicit is the better. You still have to describe it, and then you basically have to decide how you're going to measure this. Are you going to measure this in percentages? Are you going to measure it in numbers? And then lastly, how often are you going to measure this particular KPI? Then let's go and kind of like go under the covers and think about the taxonomy, okay? Then first is that, and I just kind of created this, as an example, customers per market. Then you say, okay, then the measure is actually going to be in numbers, right? The measure is going to be in numbers, but then the change are going to measure in percentages. Then you start with a baseline, like you just start with a baseline of 1,000, and then let's say that you want to measure the progress, and you want to basically say, okay, we're going to be double, and then we're going to basically says, then the increase is going to be 100%. You have to decide where you're getting this data and how you're going to measure the progress. Then remember that we had like our international strategy. Then if we add a dimension of customers in the maturity of the international, then you can basically start to step up the different phases and hopefully see the increase. And then that will have a direct impact on the P&L. And then you start to report monthly, quarterly, and all that. Then, in my particular case, I had to basically create KPIs and reports that were going to be presented at the senior SVP level during the QBRs and the NBRs. Then, any questions on that? Because I'm going to be moving to the observability part. Okay. Then observability. We have to decide what are we going to be able to produce. I was kind of explaining that in the previous slide, how we're going to visualize it. And this is one of the biggest efforts that you can think about it when you are thinking about observability. How we're going to start predicting our data and how we're going to act into it. Then just to give you I think I already gave a little bit of background, but one of the big areas that I'm managing is actually the observability piece. I'm managing the development of the service, I'm managing the testing, and I'm managing the observability. And this is all real time. Then basically when I have been working with my different stakeholders, then I had to sit down from the very beginning and decide on the data that we were going to be capturing, as well as how we were going to be reporting it and how often, and then determining what decisions were going to be done based on all this data. And if we go here, then, and it goes back. The data has to be for each stakeholder. We talked about that, I work with the senior SVPs. The senior SVPs needs are very different from the engineering needs. Then basically I have to have reports tailored specifically to an executive level. And then I have reports tailored to the TPM level, and then reports tailored to the engineering level, then in a very hierarchical way. And we have to basically slice and dice the data to show it for all these different stakeholders. And the frequency of this data actually varies tremendously, depending on the needs. Then, for example, where if we have, we basically have a website and we're measuring the market traffic. The traffic per market. Then the KPIs will be the website visits, the number of downloads, the number of requests, the number of how many people have purchased this, right? And then we have to basically report this data using different tools. Then we have so many different tools that we're using, right? Then an example of measuring traffic, you can use Adobe Analytics. That's one tool that we use. But, we also use Grafana just to basically get a sense about, the traffic that is coming to our sites and to our different services by country. And, this provides us kind of like minute by minute, second by second visibility into what's happening. And we basically, this allows us to measure the health of our system. Then what is important is that, we want to ensure that we are capturing and reporting this data, and then that we can act on it. Then if for some reason, something goes down, then we basically start to think about this, like what is happening in that particular country. Is this something that we, is it a network issue? Is this like maybe there is a holiday? Maybe, there can be so many different reasons why there are like fluctuations in the data, and we have to be constantly analyzing them. Then one thing that I thought it was fun to show is that I went back to one of my slides from the 90s. Yes, remember, we're in the 45 Unicode conference now. Then I've been presenting on this conference forever. But this is a slide that actually grabbed from one of the presentations that I did in the 90s. Kind of crazy, right? Like super primitive, how we were reporting data, yes and no, marking scalability, correct display user input. Even back then we were worrying about, is everybody enabled in Unicode, and things like that. Even like the colors, very 90s, right? And then now, the way that we're presenting the data is so much more different, right? Then basically, I kind of took some of the big chunks that will make sense, about the KPIs for internationalization, and it's like change management, that right? It's like, what are the dependencies? What services are dependent on for if we release this service, right? How long is it going to be turning around? How many bugs? What is the impact? What is the radius impact, right? And then in the localization process, we're basically going to be showing the markets, the languages, the strengths. But in just the presentation itself is just so much more different than what we had in the 90s. And of course, I had to add compliance because that's really close to my heart, right? And then, we talked about the customer support tickets, but the reason I'm showing this particular slide is because I mentioned, I worked with, I don't want to say hundreds, but almost like 100 different stakeholders. And each stakeholder wants to basically view the data in a different way. And, they have opportunities to basically slice and dice the data because the data and the dashboards are federated. Then everybody can actually go and do queries, using query languages and all that to see how their service is doing. However, they also rely on us to produce reports. And the way that they request these reports is through tickets. And many times, more than once, basically the description of what they want is in a very, very succinct way, let's say like a sentence. Then I basically created a request form where basically I asked them to create like a mock-up of their data about how they actually want to see it using Excel. Why? Because once we have the Excel file, Excel has the ability to show this in bars, in pies, in lines, and all that. And it's almost like being with the optometrist, where you basically go and say, hey, can you see this, or you prefer that? Then you show them a pie chart, and then you show them a bar graph. Because believe it or not, we have to constantly tweak these views in a period of like 2 hours. This is how time relevant and time bound these these metrics have to be. Then, this is the other example, right? Is that just basically showing like the different areas, the cost, the market share, and the revenue. And last but not least, showing the trends. Then basically, I just put together this very quick representation. But in real life, I'm going to have graphs that actually predict, if we continue this trend, like how, then we start to check that this is a downward trend, and then it's like, okay, now something is happening. What is happening? Then we have to go and look under the covers and basically investigate, because this is giving us starts predicting kind of the direction or in that particular, let's say in that particular area, right? Then last but not least, this is something that I learned like just very recently, and this is because this is one of the ways that we represent our data, that is the tag. Then this is basically a web that includes the nodes and includes the direction. Then it's basically an acyclical directional graph where basically all the different paths are covered. And basically we need to traverse this graph because there will be dependencies, there will be upstream and downstream dependencies about every single service, every single data that we have. Then this becomes increasingly complex, especially if you are talking about hundreds and hundreds of services. That is our case. Then we need to basically look for ways of simplifying and presenting this data in easy to consume way. But the data that is produced is very helpful. Then what we start to do is to basically do some snapshots of this data, at a very granular level, and then basically start traversing through the DAG to basically understand, what is guiding, some of this data. Then with that, this was actually, I believe, like my last slide, because, but before we go there, I don't know if there's anybody in the room that can tell me if there's any questions.
Who has questions? Don't be shy.
You have questions?
Well, if nobody else asks questions, I'm looking at this directed acyclic graph, which doesn't seem to have any direction.
Yes. Yes, I know that I didn't put the arrows. They're supposed to.
Okay.
But this is yeah. They're supposed to have the arrows. Thank you. That's a good catch, Norbert.
Okay, other questions?
Then I want to ask a question, and it's like, is anybody finding that the data has just exploded, and how they're handling this data in their own respective organizations?
Questions to the audience. Who wants to contribute? No, it looks like people are just tired and want to get out of here.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, anyway, if anybody wants to, remember to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can always ask me questions on LinkedIn. And I want to thank everybody for joining today. And sorry about that technical mishap. I don't know what happened.
Okay, thank you, Claudia.
Okay, thank you, Norbert. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye. Everybody else, please fill in your speaker evaluations. Thanks.
Thank you.